And he says, and he'll glorify him immediately, which means this is all going down extremely fast, guys. Not the way the prophets would speak about eons of time and things like this, and a day represents like a week and all this. No, no, no. This is going to happen immediately. He's given his friends the immediacy of how fast this is all going down. And so, then he says this, and he turns and he says, little ones. It was interesting. I saw a movie recently. I think it was Glass. And it was okay. It was mediocre. But there was one scene I remember this guy has split personalities. And one of his personalities is a 9-year-old. And he thinks that he's the worthless one of all the personalities. And this other guy who's a villain turns to him and says, no, you're the greatest of them all. And he goes, why? And he's talking like a kid. And he goes, because you see the world as it really is. And that's what Jesus had already told us. And Jesus turns to us, and he turns to these men. He says, little ones. He loves them. He loves them very much. And so Jesus turns to me and he says, little ones, I lost my place. My brain's fried. I got too... I'm not even in John. What am I doing here? Can you all believe that? I'm looking at Luke. I woke up at 5. All right. There we go. There's my passage. Yes, little ones. I'm with you a little while longer. All right. I want to express something right here with that little while longer. Okay, I'll just give you a story off the top of my head. About 2 weeks ago, Gabriel cried real bad in the middle of the night. And me and Kim were still up. And Kim goes in there and she says, what's wrong? And going over the scriptures and stuff, basically, preachers are like Mary Magdalene coming in, and she breaks the ointment on top of Jesus' feet, right? And wipes them and stuff like that. And why did Jesus say that she was doing that? He said, she's preparing me for my death. That's all preachers are, really. Is we come in on Sunday and we take the ointment of the Spirit of God and His Word and we break it upon your feet over and over every Sunday, preparing you for death. Let's be honest, that's what we're doing. Let's get down to it. Christianity is about dealing with death. We face the hard facts. We don't avoid them. We face the hard facts of eternity. And really, preachers, that's what they do. Well, I'm not sure all preachers are preparing people for eternity, but that's the job of a preacher, is preparing them for eternity every single Sunday. Mary Magdalene, over and over. A worthless individual who's in the process of preparation for death for everybody. And so the subject of death comes up a lot in a pastor's household, whether there's dealing with funerals or anything. And Gabriel's in there crying, and he says, and he knows I'm the oldest in the family. I'm 10 years older than Kim. And it suddenly became very vivid to him while laying in bed that Dad's not going to be around all the time. And he's crying, and he says, if something happens to Dad, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here if Dad's not here. I want to go with him. And I calmed him down saying, well, Gabriel, I'm trying to get in shape and all this stuff. And, I'm planning on being around a long, long time. I said, but you've got to know that there is a day coming. I said, for all of us. I said, I can't just protect you from the hard facts. I said, my job as a father is to prepare you. Not protect you from certain things, is to prepare you for certain things. And I said, I will be with Christ if anything were to happen. And I said, and you will have been prepared, and I will play a role in that. I said, but Gabriel, it's all the more important that at this young age that you have suddenly discovered this serious truth. That I remember the day I discovered that about my father, and I wept. I remember the day he said, I'm not always going to be around. And I knew that in my head, but then suddenly I knew it in my heart, and it shattered me for a moment. But my dad had a real heart-to-heart talk with me. And it's very different when suddenly death becomes very first person when it confronts you that way, as opposed to being this third, this thing out here that we talk about, and suddenly it's here. And in a way, it helps to prepare you for these things. And this is what we do in Christianity. And time is short that you have for this preparation. Does everybody understand that? And Jesus looks at these people he loves, kind of like I did my son. Little ones. I am with you a little while longer. What I'm telling all of you is that all the opportunities that God gives you, whether it's in sermons or scripture reading, or just that moment in the morning when you're alone and you woke up too early and you got nothing to do other than seek the Lord on the day, those seem like small, insignificant things. But you only have a little bit of time to access these benefits right now. And that's a powerful truth to understand, is there is a beginning and there is an end to this earthly world. And you've got to face that. And you've got this much time to find out what God has said. And you've got one job. Know it, believe it, do it. That's it. Now, these little ones, and so Jesus says that, and he says, I'm with you a little while longer. And he says this. He says, and this is familiar, he said this to the Jews earlier. He said, you will seek me. All right? Remember when he said that to the Jews? He says, you will seek me. As I said to the Jews, now I say to you. All right? And then he says this, and it's the same thing he said to the Jews. Where I'm going, you cannot come. All right. Now, this is not a small thing. Here's the difference between what he said to the Jews and what he said to his disciples. There's a part that Jesus purposely left out here. What else did he say to the Jews? You will seek me, but you will not find me. He didn't say that here, did he? Matter of fact, didn't we go over on the resurrection sermon when the angel comes and it says, I know that you seek Jesus who has been crucified. The difference. Those who seek, find. He doesn't say that part to his own disciples. But there's a separation that's happening. He says, as I said to them, and there's certain realities for both the lost and the Christians. And he turns to them and he says, you know what? You will seek me. But what I'm about to do, you cannot do. There's only one who goes into the valley of the shadow of death alone. You cannot do this. And I can prove that he's talking about his death here. He's talking about what is happening on this day. You guys have been with me for 3 years. You have been my guys, my group, my posse. Today, all that stops right now for a little while. And I go into the valley alone. That's it. But here's the weird thing. Jesus is explaining to them that today is the day of his greatest accomplishment, the day of his greatest glory. And this has got to be mind-boggling to them because as this day unfolds, it will look like the day of his greatest defeat. They will see the master broken before the masses, naked, bloody, stripped, mocked. How could God make it more obvious than literally putting a sign on top of the cross that says what? King of the Jews. Has God, even with the stupidity and the evil and the attempts at mockery and all this, God literally stopped to put a sign on who Jesus is in 3 languages. And people are so stupid, they still don't get it. With God, God will probably in eternity judge people and say, I literally put a sign on him when it happened. And if you had known the scriptures, my Jewish friends, you would have seen it. You would have known that they pierced my hands and my feet. Psalms 22. Eloi, Eloi, lama sabachthani. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? And so it goes ahead. And so, let me continue. I keep losing my frame of reference here. And he backs up, and he wants them to prepare themselves for the world without his physical presence. All right? That's the whole thing here. the world without my physical presence. I might want to remind my Catholic friends that we live in the world now without Jesus' physical presence. It's not in the Eucharist. Christ is in heaven and he has died once and once for all. And he prepares them for this time of being void. It's not like me and you. We have Jesus in his spiritual presence, in the infilling of his Holy Spirit. But for them, it's even deeper. They have both the physical and the spiritual aspect of Jesus right there. And the physical of being able to, in this world, in this immediacy of the physical realm, is going to be taken from them. And it says that. And he says, this is the framework that I want you to take away from what you will behold today, which will be horrible. You are actually seeing my greatest glory, my greatest work, the redemption of the world. That's what you're actually going to witness. And he goes ahead and he says this, take away this from it this day. A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as, and they're fixing to have the greatest example, as I have loved you, that you may love one another. Do you think that maybe by the end of that day, those words right there will have a colossal framework for them to understand loving one another? They're about to see the greatest work of love to ever take place, his greatest moment. The greatness of God will shine on that cross, and they will walk away that day going, that's how I'm supposed to love you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you. That was the example. All those hours is how he was supposed to love us, and I'm supposed to love you. Have no doubt about it. I'll just continue on, because this is an important point that I want to make applicable with common things happening in the news. He says this, all right? By this will all men will know that you are my disciples. By what? By the love that you have one another. If you have loved one another, right? All right. Do you think that sometimes you can identify different religions by their activities? Let's put it this way. No matter what other religions, how you would identify them, you want to know how you don't identify them as Christians? Christians don't go into a synagogue with an AR-15 and shoot people. Christians don't go with a vest of dynamite and blow themselves up. Throughout history, we've had the most bizarre, craziest expressions of different religions. But you know what you never find among the real Christians is hate. You never find it. I don't care what some theologians say. I don't care what experts say. It is impossible for a man to say, I am a Christian follower of Christ, and then crack a whip on a black slave until they drop to their knees. It's not possible. It is not possible to say, because the law allows it, I can do it, and therefore I will, because I have the privilege of being like I am as opposed to them. Everyone is granted a degree of respect by the virtue of these two things. One, they are made in the image and likeness of God, and Christ died for them. That should restrain anyone who has the Spirit of Christ inside of them. As a matter of fact, the great theologian who is an awesome theologian, Francis Schaeffer, said this: this is the mark of a Christian. Love. Clear and simple. It boils down to that. God is love. That is the final definer of all theology. That is the final definer of who you are. And it means more than this. It doesn't just mean that outsiders can look at us and judge whether or not we really are Christians. That is the primary premise right there. But you know another premise there that would be in the back of the heads and should be in the back of your head is this. Am I a Christian? Look at that. Christ on the cross. His greatest glory is that. That is the love of God. Am I a Christian? He wants to encourage you, not just the outsider, to judge whether ye be in the faith. That's it. And we'll close it with this. Simon said, you know what? Where are you going? Right? And he says, Simon, where I am going, you can't come right now. You can't come now, but later you will. I think that puts a chill into Peter right there. Peter probably steps back right there. I was afraid that you were talking about that. It's starting to coalesce in Peter's head what's going to happen. He's starting to figure it out. The Jews didn't quite figure it out. Is he going to kill himself or what's going on? Is he going somewhere, going on a trip? And finally, Peter is the only one bold enough to ask the question, where are you going? He senses it, doesn't he? And he answers him, Peter, today you're not going with me. I'm leaving every single one of you. You're not going with me today. But Peter, later you'll be ready. But you're not ready now. And some of us need to gauge whether or not we are ready. Some of us may not be ready. You need to be ready. And so it goes ahead. And Peter takes it further. And he thinks that he can talk big. And he's starting to see what it is. And he says, Lord, why can't I go with you right now? I think he probably had to really think about his next statement. Does he really mean this next statement? I will lay down my life for you. And I'm sure Jesus wishes that was really true, but Jesus knows the human heart. And Jesus says, truly, truly, I say to you, the rooster will not crow 3 times will not crow until you have denied me 3 times. Peter, not even you. I will be alone today. You. I'm sure that just shattered Peter. That's it. You mean even me? Even I won't go through with it? I believe Peter thought he would. I believe that Peter really thought he would. And I believe that Peter just said, okay, I'll prove you wrong. But no one can do what Jesus has done. No one. That is the gospel. That's what I mean when I say Jesus died for you. Can you appreciate that? I've gone really long. Would y'all allow me just a few more minutes to explain something? You know how I told you about all those people? If Jesus doesn't do this, none of them come back. Adam isn't coming back from what he did if Jesus doesn't do what he does. Abraham isn't coming back. None of them are coming back. The sins they committed. Jacob deceived his father. He's not coming back if Jesus doesn't do this. He sinned. David's adultery. He's counting on Jesus. He won't be coming back if Jesus doesn't do this. Moses killed a man. He's not coming back if Jesus does not pull this off. All of these men sinned. Rahab the harlot. She was a harlot. She's not coming back. Do you understand how it all rested on Jesus that day? It all rested on him. Think about that. None of these great men of faith, all of Solomon's wisdom, won't do it. Samson's strength will not bring him back. Every one of these men committed grievous sins. Paul, he facilitated the death of another Christian. He won't be coming back. All is lost if Jesus doesn't pull it off. That's why it's so significant when Elijah and Moses show up on the Mount of Transfiguration and they're talking to him about one thing. You know that you have to go to the cross. You saw it in the scriptures. We were doing those sacrifices over and over and over. Over and over. I covered my own people with a giant bush dipped in blood and threw it over and had the priest go through them, throwing blood over my millions of people. They literally did this. On one of their greatest days of sacrifice, the priest dipped giant bushes into vats of blood, throwing the blood of the sacrifice as far as they could upon every single one of them, covering the nation in blood. And Moses stood there and saw over it as he looked out upon an army of people covered in blood. And Elijah's saying to him, I stood against Baal. I stood against the prophets of Baal. I stood against Jezebel. And now you have to stand against Satan. You have to stand against a whole sin-filled world. And you're the only one who can do this. And Jesus knows what must be done. He will not fail. And that's how you know Jesus will not fail you.